As I'm sure many of you saw, the 2024 NFL regular season schedule recently dropped. Did you know the 49ers have the most primetime games in the NFL with 6? Did you know the 49ers are favored to win the NFC West? What about the 49ers being favored in every single matchup? Did you know the 49ers are runner-up only next to the Kansas City Chiefs to win the Super Bowl? Talk about some massive expectations. Do you think they can handle that pressure? Let's get into the most exciting games that I see on the 49ers schedule, as well as the games that cause for a little bit more concern, a little bit more nervous about. And I'll give you a hint. There's really only 2 of them. So with that being said, let's get into it, y'all. Yo, what's up, everybody? It's your boy, Ryan Tigey, back in action. The short answer to my question that I asked in the beginning, do I think they can handle the pressure? I'm going to give you the answer. And the short answer to that is yes. Why do I think that? Well, a couple reasons. Number one, because they've proven it year over year over year. When you think about it, the 49ers, they haven't been a sleeper team since they made it to the Super Bowl in 2019, when they actually were a sleeper team, and then they just came on strong out of nowhere and just absolutely dominated. But since the 2019 Super Bowl run, no team has overlooked the 49ers when they're going up against the plan. Especially if you just look at the last 2 years specifically, the 49ers have been dominant, and they continue to be dominant and handle that pressure year over year. So there's no reason to think otherwise. And the best part about it is it's because they're the same team. They got the same players, same core players. They got the same coaching staff, same offensive scheme. And when you think about the defensive side of the ball, it's without question that they regressed last season relative to what the standards are and expectations of 49ers fans. They were not as good on defense last year as they were years prior. So it's only going to be safe to assume with the coaching changes that they made, with the offseason acquisitions and the players that they brought in, they're going to get better. And they are going to get back into the top 5, top 3 defense, which they've been ever since going on their Super Bowl run in 2019 in this Kyle Shanahan era. And then the final component of that would be the franchise quarterback is going into a contract year. Look at all players across the NFL, not just the 49ers, but you can obviously reference 49er players. When they go into a contract year, like Deebo Samuel did, like Brandon Ayuk did last season, what do they typically do? They tend to have their best season whenever they're going into a contract year. They want to get paid. And so when the franchise quarterback who's getting paid literally nothing is going into a contract year, do you think Brock Purdy wants the ball outside of all the bullshit of people doubting him, still not giving him the credit he deserves? Do you think he wants the ball to maximize the value of payment that he is going to receive? Yeah, I'd say so. So that's why I think the 49ers are going to have no issue handling this pressure of what I'm seeing across the internet of people asking the question, can they live up to it? I have no doubt in my mind. So let's jump into the season. Right from the start, the 49ers start off with a banger. The New York Jets are coming into town at Levi Stadium, Monday Night Football, one of their 6 primetime games, and you got a lot of star power on both teams. Let alone you have Kyle Shanahan versus his former defensive coordinator, Robert Saleh. That always just spikes intrigue in a matchup like that, just because they both know each other so well. They both know what they're trying to do. And then, of course, you got Aaron Rodgers, A-Rod. He's coming back. There is going to be a shit ton of expectations on the Jets. Super Bowl or bust. Even though they haven't been to the playoffs in decades, because A-Rod is coming back healthy, there's going to be a lot of pressure on the New York Jets, which is going to help take a little bit of pressure off the 49ers going into week 1. Even though it's a home game, the comeback of Aaron Rodgers is going to be all the narrative. And one thing to not forget, following the end of last season, when the 49ers lost to the Kansas City Chiefs in the Super Bowl, as we all know, one of the first tweets that I saw on X was the defensive back for the New York Jets, Sauce Gardner, and he was talking his shit. And the person that immediately clapped back when they saw that, Mooney Ward. Mooney Ward called him out saying, you didn't even make it to the playoffs. Why are you saying the 49ers look good on paper, but they're just a dog shit team? So you don't think that is going to immediately bring some fuel to the fire for the boys getting ready for week 1. It is going to. And the best part about it is on Kay Adams' show, the guest was Mooney Ward. She asked him about Sauce Gardner. Let's take a listen to what Mooney Ward had to say about that situation.
What's up with you and Sauce?
I never met Sauce. I don't know Sauce. I never talked to the man. But it was just like, you got to think, Miss K. So we had just lost the Super Bowl. I get on Twitter and I see a bunch of people tweeting about, our team losing the Super Bowl. In my head, I'm thinking, like, you in the NFL as well, like, you didn't make it to the Super Bowl. You didn't even make it to the playoffs. So, why you talking about our team? But as I look back on it, I realized he was just giving this opinion. He really didn't say anything bad about the 49ers. So I tried to take the tweet down so the shit didn't blow up, but obviously everybody blew up. But I don't have no beef with Sauce. If I did, I'll just tell, BA and Debo to handle that for me because I'm not a receiver lining up against Sauce. I think he's a hell of a player, one of the best young corners in the game. He definitely a big dog. So, but I look forward to playing this week 1 and seeing BA and Debo, try to handle that little business for me.
So obviously Mooney Ward isn't coming off an emotional loss because literally Sauce Gardner tweeted that the second the game was over. And the balls for him to say that when he's a young player in the league, let alone his team did not even come close to sniffing the playoffs. They were atrocious regardless of the quarterback situation. What did the 49ers do when Brock Purdy started? He was the third string quarterback, still made it to NFC championship game against the Eagles. His team with a backup quarterback, their second string backup quarterback, they didn't even sniff the playoffs. So the audacity of that guy to talk his shit, I absolutely love it. And I absolutely love the media is not letting that narrative die down because Mooney Ward clapped back. He's being professional and less emotional about it right now. But that Debo and Ayuk comment, you don't think that's going to be bulletin board material as it leads up to week 1? It will be. And I absolutely love it. So thank you, Sauce Gardner, for giving the boys a little extra motivation after talking your shit because they lost in the Super Bowl to Patrick Mahomes. So one of the big narratives that I've been seeing on the internet about the 49ers schedule, and really any team schedule for that matter, is the advantage and disadvantage of rest. Teams coming off buys, they have this many more days of rest when they go up against this opponent. I think it's more of just kind of a narrative. Unless somebody is battling to come back from an injury, I don't think there's really any advantage or disadvantage. They're always going to be banged up throughout the season. I think people just make it a little bit more of a big deal in the offseason than when it actually comes into fruition during the regular season. But to that point, because there is something to it, it's not completely nothing, but the 49ers have minus 16 days of rest. So their opponents that they're facing throughout the year, they're playing teams with a total of 16 more days worth of rest versus what the 49ers have. Whereas the Ravens, they're one of the teams that are plus 16 days of rest. So they're going to have 16 more days of rest versus the opposing teams that they play throughout the year. Take that with a grain of salt. Another team like the Eagles, they're plus 11. But to that point of rest days, the 49ers play the Chiefs, the Dallas Cowboys, and the Buffalo Bills, all 3 teams coming off their bye the previous week. Which leads me to my next point. Games I'm most concerned about. And as I mentioned from up top, there's only 2 of them. The first one being, I think it's pretty obvious, the Kansas City Chiefs. The Kansas City Chiefs obviously have stuck it to the Niners in 2 Super Bowls, and when the 49ers last played them in the regular season, they had just picked up Christian McCaffrey from the Panthers. He flew in, had 1 or 2 days of practice. He wasn't even anticipated to play that game, but he ended up playing more than 20 snaps, which is just what CMC does. He's an absolute beast. But the Chiefs, they whooped that ass against the 49ers at Levi Stadium. And then, of course, we all know about the Super Bowls. The real disadvantage comes in, not only that has it been a team the 49ers have just struggled to beat, even when they have leads going into the fourth quarter, but Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes, their era, they're undefeated going against any team in the NFL coming off a bye. Not only does it give rest for the players, but one of the brightest minds in football is Andy Reid. Nothing shocking there. But it gives Andy Reid time to dial up plays and scheme up the defense he's going to be going against. And clearly, with the Kansas City Chiefs, it has worked. So I believe the fact that the Chiefs are coming off a bye, they're historically unbelievable playing teams coming off a bye and getting a win, and the fact that the 49ers have struggled to beat them in regular season games and in the biggest games, I think that really does give a disadvantage to the 49ers. Whereas Dallas, when they play week 8, so they play the Chiefs week 7 and the Dallas week 8, both teams are coming off byes. Well, it's a different tune for Dallas, who, by the way, I think is going to take a step back this year. I don't think the Cowboys are going to be anywhere close to the dominance they've been the past couple of years with Mike McCarthy winning 12 games every year. They're probably still going to win a lot of games because their division's okay. But I think we're going to see a regression in the Dallas Cowboys this year. But the Dallas Cowboys under Mike McCarthy, they have been historically pretty bad coming off byes, because when you think about it, Mike McCarthy having a little extra time to scheme things up, that may be a little limited with what he can do, especially relative to Andy Reid. So even though they play two teams on coming off back-to-back byes, the Chiefs, I'm worried about. Dallas, not worried about. Still excited for, but not worried about. And then the second game that is the most concerning to me, or the one I'm most nervous about, I should say, is the Buffalo Bills game, who happen to also be coming off their bye when they play the 49ers. But that's not the main reason. Their bye isn't the main reason, not like it is with the Chiefs. The 49ers have struggled with mobile quarterbacks. That's nothing new. They've done better, like going against Kyler Murray, but just historically speaking, under this era of leadership, Kyle Shanahan, John Lynch, they have a tougher time with mobile quarterbacks. Every team does, but the Niners particularly are the ones that struggle with quarterbacks who can run. And we all know Josh Allen can run. Also, Josh Allen, when he's played the 49ers under the Kyle Shanahan era, he has dominated. And I could be wrong with saying this, but I believe the last time they played was during the regular season, was in the COVID era, when the Niners got kicked out of Levi Stadium and were playing in Arizona's as their home game. Well, Josh Allen dominated the 49ers. Now, the 49ers are a much upgraded team since that point, but nonetheless, Josh Allen, a Bay Area boy, he has had success when going against the 49ers. And the game is in Buffalo, so it's going to be cold as shit, and it's the total opposite side of the country, and the team that you're going to face is going to have 7 extra days of rest. So I definitely think that gives a little advantage to the Bills. Now, the one advantage to the 49ers, the Bills had a shit ton of turnover this past offseason. They lost a bunch of vet players on both sides of the ball. Obviously, Stephon Diggs is one of the more notable ones, is now on to the Houston Texans, but they lost a lot of key pieces that they had because they ran into some cap issues with all the big players, all the big money that they paid players. So the 49ers, I think it's more of a level playing field, even though they have those circumstances kind of working against them across country, coming off a bye in Buffalo, freezing cold. So those are the two games that are the ones that are both the most concerning for me. So now let's pivot to the games that I'm most excited about. And I'm going to preface this by outside of the division, because I always get hyped for Seattle. I always get hyped for the Rams. So I'm going to leave the NFC West out of it. Two of them I've already talked about, the Jets and the Cowboys. The other one I'm excited for, the Green Bay Packers. The Green Bay Packers felt they should have won that playoff game last season. They didn't.
I feel like we let a team off the hook last year in the playoffs, and we know that. And everybody on this team here for a mission, and we ready to win a Super Bowl. So
there's been a lot of dick riding of Jordan Love, just a lot of ass kissing of Jordan Love, saying how much of a baller he is, how much of a stud he is. Jordan Love is levels ahead of Brock Purdy, which is just absolutely asinine. So I'm excited for the 49ers to give it to the Green Bay Packers once again, because that's what they've done throughout the past couple of times, and a lot of those times have been in the playoff games where the 49ers take it to the Packers. So I'm excited about that, and I'm excited to hear all the Jordan Love hype going against Brock Purdy, and then Brock Purdy doing what Brock Purdy does and walking out with a dub. And the one that I think people would probably bypass the most or overlook the most, the Chicago Bears. I'm very excited for the Chicago Bears. That one also at Levi Stadium. And this is a little bit more unorthodox as to why I'm excited about. I'm excited about it because the Bears brought in a lot of players this past offseason. They got Sweat last year in the middle of the year, who changed up their defensive line from the Washington Commanders, but then they made some moves getting Keenan Allen, and then, of course, the draft. They drafted the number 1 overall pick, which they got from the Carolina Panthers because the Carolina Panthers stink, but they got Caleb Williams, And then they also got another first-round receiver. The one thing, I know Caleb Williams gets a lot of hype, but I just continue to hear like he is just a guaranteed hit. There's no way Caleb Williams could be bad. And anytime I hear that, I just feel like people are talking out of both sides of their mouth. We know from the stats what they say. There's like a 50% hit rate on quarterbacks picked in the first round. We all witness it as 49er fans, how jacked up we were to get Trey Lance and the moves that the 49ers made to get him, and then that not panning out. Shit, that whole draft class of Trey Lance, none of those quarterbacks worked out. Zach Wilson, Trevor Lawrence, the best out of the bunch, and then Justin Fields, who has just been traded for a bag of bones to the Pittsburgh Steelers with the preface it of, oh, you're going to sit by Mr. Unlimited, Mr. Danger Witch, Mr. Russell Wilson. So the fact that we've experienced that, and you hear it every single draft year, every time quarterbacks are drafted, and there was an abnormal amount of quarterbacks that went in the first round, just all the talk about Caleb Williams being just a guaranteed Andrew Luck type player who's perfect. His game is going to transition perfectly to the NFL. I'm not that big of a believer in the Caleb Williams show. And I think it's going to be great when the 49ers roll into town to take on the Chicago Bears week 14, when it's already a long season for rookies because they don't play that many games in college, to just give him a true NFL welcome late in the season. And I think it's just going to be a great game for the 49ers to thrust their will on an opposing team. So I'm excited about the Chicago Bears. And then, of course, always excited when I see two great offensive minds, let alone two coaches that worked for a decade plus together, being the Miami Dolphins. This year it's in Miami. Obviously, we have great memories of the first matchup that Kyle and Mike went up against one another when Jimmy G went down. Brock Purdy came in and just absolutely dominated. I'm excited to see how that goes. Anytime there's been a coach that's worked closely or has been on the 49er staff going up against Kyle Shanahan, I get very excited for. Everyone knows Mike McDaniel is a brainiac when it comes to the game of football and drawing up offensive games. I mean, they took that sprint motion from Mike McDaniel. I think that's who Kyle took that from. So it's going to be interesting to see what both coaches dial up, because you know they both want to win that game so bad. There is more pride in those games where Kyle is going up against one of his underlings, especially when you got a coach on the other side that is known as Mr. Brainiac. So I look forward to I love Mike McDaniel. So I'm excited to see the matchup in that game as well. And then finally, the Detroit Lions, another team that truly believed they should have won that NFC Championship game. I'm not going to lie, I was scared shitless going into halftime, but the boys rallied. They showed they're the better team, which they are. I don't think anybody wasn't thinking that going into that game, but holy shit, Detroit got off to a fast start. But we all know ultimately the 49ers came back, whooped that ass, came back from one of the largest deficits going into halftime at the NFC Championship game. So I'm excited about that one, just because you know the 49ers play great against Jared Goff. Dan Campbell's going to want to get some get back, but I think they are going to run into a brick wall going against the 49ers, who are going to be just as motivated to just prove to anybody that doubted that, yeah, we're the better team. So those are the games I'm most excited for, games I'm most worried about. And when you just look at the schedule from a 30,000-foot view, the 49ers play 9 teams out of 17. 9 of those teams went to the playoffs last year, so they got a stacked schedule, even though, according to the PFF charts of hardness of schedule, they're like in the middle of the pack. Okay, but we also do all know that every year there's like 6 or 7 teams that didn't make it to the playoffs the previous year that make it to the playoffs the following year. So just looking at the schedule, there's a lot of good games. I love that they are dominating the primetime television, because those are always the best games, the games everyone across the country is watching, and I cannot wait. So as I wrap up here, the second phase of OTAs has officially begun. You're hearing some more smoke about Brandon Ayuk and, being far apart in contract negotiations. This is to be expected, as I've stated over and over in numerous other videos. This is what happens. The 49ers do things on their timeline. They're not just going to offer up their max offer right off the jump. We have history that shows us with Bosa, with Debo, with all these players that the 49ers have just given absolute bags to. This is what they do. They're tough negotiators. They'll get a deal done. I just hope it's before training camp. But the second phase of OTAs have begun a little over 3 months before regular season football is back. So as things start to heat up, as training camp approaches, as more news drops, I'll be back. But until then, like, comment, subscribe. You know the deal. Hit me up. Peace.